victim is Aguinaldo Nesbitt, shot and killed at his own store with his own gun. The Monteculla file says that he died from the bullet, fired from his own gun, may I remind you, traveling upwards through his lung, tearing it and causing some pretty gnarly internal damage. He died while in shock as his lungs filled with blood.
You mean he literally drowned in his own blood?
Ow. Yeah, something like that, probably.
Can we get on with the case?
As you wish! Now, everyone, let the glass trial begin!
Let's start off this case with where everyone was the day of the murder. Steve Harmon, Bobo Evans, and James King were there the day of the murder, correct?
Yeah, we were there the day of the robbery, but I sure ain't pulled a trigger on him, man. We wanted his money, not his life.
Where's your evidence? There isn't any evidence that my client, James King, was anywhere near the store that day.
No, that's wrong! Osvaldo identified Bobo, King, and Steve in his testimony. He testified that he was a part of the crime too. He was supposed to be the distractor, as Steve was supposed to be the lookout.
So? Osvaldo's a liar. We know that. He's part of a gang that requires you to harm someone else in order to even join in the first place. How do we know he's not lying?
Because lying on the stand is wrong. He has a point, though. He claimed to be afraid of Bobo and Steve, but he's shown to be a pretty bad person for a 14-year-old. He even has a pretty lengthy criminal record.
See? He was in trouble because he was born to be connected to a murder case. It would make sense for him to do absolutely anything to get out of trouble, including lying on my client's name.
Wow, kid's been racking up the charges for sure. Being part of a robbery, fighting his girlfriend, getting another girl pregnant, being part of a gang. Ugh, this kid might even surpass me in committing crimes. Might have to give him the title as the ultimate criminal.
Jeez, I know the kid's bad, but would he really lie about being part of the crime? Was Osvaldo lying?
He couldn't have been lying. What? How can you be so sure? He's a criminal. A tiny, evil, dastardly criminal.
In the diary that Steve wrote,
In the
screenplay Steve wrote, he admitted to previously knowing Osvaldo and having an interaction with him as well. If anyone here knows if Osvaldo is lying, it's Steve. Further, in the journal, Steve writes, "What did I do? What did I do? Anyone can walk into a drugstore and look around. Is that what I'm on trial for? I didn't do nothing." Also, he inputs a conversation that he has with King that literally has King asking him to join the robbery.
I never answered.
Steve, shut up.
Whether you answered or not, he still told you about the crime. He also mentioned that Bobo would be part of the robbery and said, "All we need is a lookout."
My client was under a lot of pressure.
That's a load of jargon. You have to explain yourself. How does anything you said connect back to your earlier statement about Osvaldo not lying?
Steve writing down that interaction with King, as well as panicking after his father started crying, proves that Osvaldo wasn't lying because it directly matches what he said. He, Osvaldo, says that King and Bobo was going to do the physical robbery while Steve was the lookout and he was supposed to knock over the garbage can if anyone comes by that store. Steve confirms those positions in his journal and admits to heading into the store to get some gum, quote unquote. It doesn't matter whether or not Osvaldo is a criminal. We know that he's not lying on the stand at that moment because Steve backs up his story unconsciously.
My client wasn't in the right state of mind when writing that, so that cannot be solely used to determine his innocence or guilt.
Yeah. Do you have any other evidence? Huh?
Oop, oop, oop. Here we go again. Oop, 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 oop. Someone's in denial.
I didn't do it. Really? You have to believe me. Steve, please, calm down. No, my youth is in jeopardy. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Take some deep breaths. You're panicking. Everything is okay.
Nothing is okay. My client is getting bombarded with allegations.
Let's just look back at the other testimonies. Take Henry's, for example. She points out King, but not Steve. She says that they were arguing, and then she left.
She might have saw them arguing, but at no point did she see my client shoot Mr. Nesbitt. Plus, she only said she saw the men arguing, and someone get physical before she left. She did not see Mr. Nesbitt's death, nor did she describe my client at any point. She's an old woman who just switched up the actual perpetrator with any young black man that she saw at the lineup. That man happened to be my client, who, may I remind you, was at his cousin's house the day of the robbery.
Right. Said cousin is the only one who could attest to that, as there weren't any neighbors who saw him, nor did we have the supposed lamp he brought her.
He was dead. His cousin wasn't lying about that.
Right. As for Mr. Harmon, his whereabouts are at the crime scene as well, as we have just proved. Not only has Steve and Osvaldo proved that, but if we look at Bobo's testimony, he also stated that King's friend was seen coming out of that store. I agree with that. In Bobo's testimony, he identified both King and Steve. He says he's
Been knowing King all my life,
but he
just met the other guy
Steve
before the robbery went down.
But he's a criminal too. Let's look at his criminal record, shall we? Oh my! Selling drugs, breaking and entering, grand theft auto, stealing a car radio, fighting a guy, and potentially killing a guy, and now robbery. What a laundry list.
As we did with Osvaldo, we're going to disregard the criminal record and solely look at the testimony. He says,
Me and King planned out to get over, and we done it.
That means that now we have both Osvaldo, King, and now Bobo saying that King planned the robbery in cahoots with Bobo. If we took that into account, then Steve's admittance to the conversation with King about the robbery being a setup and asking him to join doesn't seem all that fictional. I am also taking into account that Steve doesn't actually answer him at the end, and yet he was still at the scene of the crime that fatal day. All because he didn't want to let down one person, the one person who also happened to shoot Mr. Nesbitt.
Looks like you've reached a verdict. Then, are we ready to cast our votes? Okay, then let's get excited. Who will be chosen as the Blacken? Will you make the right choice or the dreadfully wrong one? What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be?
Let me recap the crime. Steve Harmon and James King actually go further back than the small trial ground and the robbery gone south. Steve met King on a certain amount of time ago and ended up becoming close. King being older led to a sort of mentor/student relationship with them. Steve looked at him like a second father or some kind of older brother. He did not want to disappoint him. As to be expected, when King came to him and proposed this robbery, Steve wanted to say yes. He would do almost anything to get in King's good graces and seemed tougher than he actually was. Being an average teenager, committing crimes didn't come naturally to him, unlike Osvaldo. So he hesitated on the answer. He didn't want to outwardly say no, but he also didn't want to readily agree. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, he did not verbally answer King. He was, however, there the day of the crime. With him potentially being the lookout in mind, he walked into the store, true to his word. He looked around the store half-heartedly, searching for any cops or witnesses. We know this because we see photos of him not only in the store roaming the halls on page 221 and 222, but also outside of the store, either walking towards the store or walking away from it. After looking, as we clearly see on pages 246 and 247. Since he didn't intend on being the lookout, he didn't feel as though he needed to give a sign, but little did he know that saying nothing was the biggest sign of them all. After walking away, Bobo and King took the silence as a sign to jazz things up in the store. Nobody seemed to notice Mrs. Henry going to the back to find her poor, sick granddaughter some medicine. Her hearing the fight made her flee, but that didn't stop the impending danger that was coming for Mr. Nesbit. At some point during the argument, the actual robbery started. Bobo and King demanded the money that they came for, but Mr. Aguinaldo Nesbit was not going to give it up easily, as those were his funds to feed and take care of his loving family back home. He pulled his own licensed, legal firearm out in an effort to protect his wealth. We know this because of the testimony of City Clerk Alan Forbes. He says, "It was a registered gun. Our records show that Mr. Nesbit applied for a license to have a gun on premises in August of 1989. That permit was still in effect. The gun was licensed to him from that time." This means that the only weapon that could have been used was Nesbit's own. His resistance ended up costing him his life, however, when James King decided to fight back. As King and Bobo did not bring any weapons with them, only intending to use their fists and words, King had to think fast. Albeit, it was a dumb decision, but it was all he could do to not end up the victim himself. James King turned and shot Mr. Nesbit with his own firearm, lodging the bullet into the upper trapezius area. They took the money and a couple cigarettes, ransacking the place in the process, as we know from the now ex-employee's testimony, along with the photos of the crime scene, and left Mr. Nesbit to his death. In the end, it was not Bobo, Steve, nor even Osvaldo who took Aguinaldo Nesbit's life, but the silent one in the corner became the silencer. James King killed Aguinaldo Nesbit in cold blood and proceeded to join Bobo to go get some fried chicken, wedges, and some sodas afterward. He is the murderer. Everyone else ended up becoming his accomplices. While that means that he, and only him, will be the blackened and get punished, we cannot just let everyone else off scot-free. As Bobo was the other partner in crime in this robbery turned murder, he should get a similar sentence as James King. Not only as James King, not death, but 25 to life. Osvaldo, while still being a little 14-year-old, is clearly a threat to us all, and we cannot let him walk free. I propose we give him 25 to 40 years, and an assigned therapist to get him on the right path in his jailed life. Steve should be let off from jail time, but certainly not fully wiped of punishment. I propose Mr. Steve Harmon gets a full 2 years of community service where he will pay off the debt left on him from indirectly causing Mr. Nesbit's death. If only he hadn't remained silent with both his knowledge and signal, we would still be graced with Mr. Nesbit's boisterous presence. Aren't I right, Mr. James King? Yeah, I did it.
Wait a minute,
For what? We've already voted. I'm the blackened. I killed Alvadado, Oswald, Aguinaldo, whatever. I killed Nesbit. Might have not meant to, but it happened. Old man wouldn't stop fighting us, and I just panicked, okay? Let's just get on with it. I still get paid for this, right?
Oh, of course! Now then, I've prepared a very special punishment for James King, the ultimate robbing mastermind. Let's give it everything we've got. It's punishment time!
James King, Aguinaldo.
It's punishment time!
My voice sounds naturally high. When recorded, then I have to go lower to defeat the peaks. Bro, NB math right here, NB math. Oh! Pay off the debt left on him before I propose Mr. Steve Heron